right, hello Digital Storytelling. I'm here with my dad, the one and only Jerry W. Harper, the second, formerly known as QB Blitz in the ring. Say hello, Dad.
Hello.
All right, Dad, so why don't we go off and get started? Tell them how you got into the wrestling business as a whole. What made you want to pursue a pro wrestling career?
Well, it was back in around 97. I had played some football overseas, and I got married early in 98, and there was every Saturday night you had wrestling on TV. You had would have like Steel City Wrestling, you had PWX, and you had USCW Wrestling, which are all local promotions, and then at 11 o'clock it would be ECW Wrestling, and two of the shows would advertise about having a training school. So I watched the wrestling. I was never really a huge wrestling fan. It wasn't like my mainstay sport, but I started watching the local wrestling, and I thought to myself, like, I think I could do that, and then that's what made me get into it.
And Dominic DeNucci was the one that trained you, right?
Well, the first wrestling school I went to was United States Championship Wrestling, which USCW, and Dominic, USCW used Dominic's ring, and we had Bruno Sammartino as one of our announcers. So when I started training with Sal, his name was Sal Conte, obviously, having guys like Bruno Sammartino at your shows and Dominic DeNucci, you would go and show the respect. You'd go up and talk with them. And I happened to have a conversation with Dominic DeNucci at a show, and he said, he was going to be opening up a training school with Shane Douglas called the House of Hardcore 2 up in New Brighton, Pennsylvania. And there's another guy, he goes by the name of Cody Michaels, but his name is Mark Heenan, and Mark was helping them finance to get the school started. So I put my name in, and you had to be selected actually for the first class, and I got into the first class.
Awesome. So what all promotions did you end up wrestling for?
Oh man, so locally, USCW, Black Diamond Wrestling, PWX, IWC, there was a bunch of Cleveland All Pro, UPW. I'm trying to think of Powerhouse Hughes had a promotion down in locally here, and I can't think of the name of the promotion. There's I'm trying to think of it. There's just a bunch of them that I can't even think off the top of my head right now, but I think when we sat down and talked about it, we worked for 23 different promotions throughout.
That's awesome. Why don't you tell them a little bit about the Tri-Kais and what you guys were all about?
Well, the way it started, so with wrestling, like at USCW, that's where I had my first match. We were all kind of finding our way. So you had guys like Sam Sledge, you had JT Rogers, you had Dynamite Dean. These are all guys that I palled around with, and we were all trying to find that, character. And back then, WWE and WCW were going head to head every week, but you can't have all guys that are just bad guys or good guys, or this guy's the beer drinker and this guy's the Hellraiser and this guy's the butt kicker. So you're trying to find your character, and at USCW, what I've always been proud of is, like, my character came in as QB Blitz. I've always been known as QB Blitz. I wasn't the football guy, or I came in and I developed that character, and I've kept that same name. Multiple guys that you'll meet, especially indie wrestling, have had different names. But at that time, I came in as a football player, as the football guy. And one of the things that I realized is, everybody's going for that singles title. Everybody's going for, some promotions had PWX was a great promotion because they had their heavyweight title, but they had their hardcore title, and they had their Three Rivers title. They had some different things. But what always attracted me was, the tag team division. Most of the guys were just thrown together. But there was guys that really good tag teams that developed here in Pittsburgh. Like you had the Wrong Crowd, which is Paul Ellis and Brian Anthony. They have one of the best promos they ever did, and they were just a great tag team to follow. So Sam Sledge and I decided way back when that we wanted to develop this tag team. Now, it took us a minute to get the name because, we were Sam Sledge and QB Blitz, and, we played around with the name for a while. We were the Glam Slam, and, but then actually Norm Connors from IWC was talking to us, and, the fraternity gimmick had been done before. People had done the fraternity gimmick. But, Norm said, you two guys remind me of, frat brothers. And he said, you should do a fraternity gimmick. And at first we were like, come on, that's been done. Why would we do that? It didn't really make sense. And then we pondered on it, and, we kind of took the craziness of Animal House and the modernized old school and kind of, just combine it together, and it worked. And, we came, we were, the ultimate faces. And what really clicked for us, and it really developed our characters, because Sam was Sam the Hammer Sledge, and his thing was he's a big guy. He was 330 pounds, and he's just a big force to be reckoned with in the ring. But he didn't have that push to get that over to be where he was the headliner. And then there was me, QB Blitz, I was a linebacker character, and back when I started, I was I was a big, I was in shape, and I was, muscular, and, had that, killer instinct, of a middle linebacker. But here again, you can only go so far with the physical attributes. You have to play the crowd. You have to play the character. So, but you combine those two guys, and it was money. I mean, every promotion we worked with, and PWX was one of our promotions where we wrestled the most. And, the crowd just loved what we did in the ring, and we were telling a good story, and we were also able to, sell the storyline of what the Tri-Chi was all about. The party gimmick. We played the whole pledge roles. So it was a broader character, and that's what really made it, develop the character of the Tri-Chi.
And you guys were successful too. You won tag team titles.
We won tag team titles, and it was back in the day where, right now wrestling's at one of the best levels it's been. I mean, in any given weekend here in Pittsburgh, there's at least one or two shows. Back when we were wrestling, PWX had shows on a weekly basis, sometimes 2 weeks. IWC was very sporadic, maybe once a month. Black Diamond was once or twice, every 2 months, once a month, maybe. They weren't consistent. They didn't have a building. CWF, that was Powerhouse's place. they'd have a show every now, and you'd have other promotions that would pop up, but it wasn't this consistent where you had 4 or 5 promotions that were running all the time. Now KSWA, is another place that we worked. We actually worked with them. They were actually our friends. We started out with those guys, and they would run consistently. But KSWA was kind of a different, I applaud them for what they've done over the years. They were kind of, because you look at it now, it's going to be 20 years for these guys. That's a big accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of worked it to where, hey, if you're on our main roster, we want you to commit to us. And PWX was the same thing. Hey, if you're on our main roster, we want you to commit to us. And then you had IWC, which would say the same thing. And if there's any advice that I could give to younger guys right now is like, take that in stride. Learn how to develop your character, or go under the hood and develop another character. Develop your skill. Because we looked at it like, hey, we're the track guys and we're going to do what we want. And we were very successful at PWX. It was really, really cool back in the early, mid 90s, where, 2005s. But in the mid 90s, you had WCW and WWF. In 2005, you had PWX and IWC, and they got to a point where Jim Miller and Dorham Connors were actually working, and we were doing trade-offs on some shows. Like, they would send some talent to us, and we'd send some talent to them. And it, so like teams like the Gambino brothers, which were like huge at IWC, were able to wrestle on a PWX show against the track guys. And we were supposed to do the same thing, and then it fizzled out before it ever happened. But it was really good where we had the talent exchange, because we all knew each other outside. Mickey Gambino and I trained together at IWC. So, but that's the thing is, like, the back in the day, we were very successful at PWX, but as we've talked before, PWX was isolated. PWX was in McKeesport. A lot of people didn't want to travel to McKeesport. It was hardcore people that followed wrestling or were local that would come to McKeesport. IWC had a different crowd. CWF had a different crowd. So it was, it was different. And it's not, PWX always had and has always been known for the most part of having their own facility. So that was, great. And, when we made the decision, and it was, like I said, one of the things that you had back then that you don't have so much now is, like, you made the decision, if you're going to PWX, you were PWX, and you trained at the PWX school, and you represented PWX. If you went to IWC, you were IWC. You trained with IWC, and you didn't cross that. And it took me a long time, and I think it took, my friends a long time to realize, like, it makes sense. Like, if you can go to RWA and see ABC talent, and you can go to IWC and see the same talent, and you can go to PWX and see that same talent, it's kind of watered down, so it does make sense, especially in your character development, because you want to help your home promotion. You want to help them be, it's just like we were talking about earlier today. If a promotion's asking you to do a promo or come to wrestle on a show, and you go to another show and they say, hey, we don't want you on our show now, it makes sense, because they're trying to boost their talent roster.
Right. So do you want to talk about the friends that you've made in the business and everything like that?
It's used to be very taboo when I would meet someone and they would say, hey, tell me about this pro wrestling stuff. It was like, it didn't matter if it was in a business relationship or friends or family. They'd be like, so you do pro wrestling? But some of my best friends I've met through wrestling, and that's a great thing. And recently, in the last couple of years, business wise, I've ran into more people that are like, oh yeah, I know this guy, and so it's become more, more visual now. But guys like Devin Devine, Darren Smythe, JT Rogers, Sam Sledge. I mean, these are, BC Still, Bobby Williams. These are all guys that I met through wrestling, and we've all become really close friends. There's guys like Shima, Zion, I always call him Shima, that have went way past where we have, and he's still a good friend. These are guys that I've trained with, and even moving further, like now it's like on the second tier, like guys like Brandon Kay and Marshall Gambino, and these are all guys that we worked in promotions or we knew each other, but now it's in that second tier of friendship where now we're older and we're like, hey man, because when you got a locker room of 20 guys, you're not pals with all 20. You're not hanging out with all 20 guys. You might be on the same show, and you might, have a match, or you might have, a storyline together. But there's a difference between acquaintance and friends. But these guys, these are all true friends that have become, lifelong friends, and that's a really cool thing. I mean, with football, I have my football friends. In wrestling, I have my wrestling friends.
So one final question. It's kind of a more personal question, but are you proud that I'm kind of following in the pro wrestling footsteps of the family?
I think that the proudest thing is, and I think that you and I have talked about this, is I am very proud of it. One, because it's awesome that you have that much interest in it. Two is because for a lot of years, when you were growing up, your mom never understood pro wrestling. Like, she knew it was something I did, and honestly, it's something that I did. It kept me in shape. It kept me, you've got to have an outlet, and wrestling was my outlet. But your mom never understood wrestling. And it always puzzled her, because I'd be like, hey, that's such and such, and I'd be like, that's Devin Devine, and she goes, why do you guys have two names? Why don't, and me, it would be, hey, Blitz or QB, or, and it's, and it just boggled her mind. Then when you got involved in it, then it became okay. But no, I think it's really awesome. And what I'm really proud of is, a lot of people have this misconception that you got involved in this, like with Pit Fight. Like when you started Pit Fight, yeah, I'm here to help. I'm here to, but people, I think, are more amazed now when they find out that, like, you're doing the booking, you're doing the planning, if you want to bounce an idea, but I'm not controlling anything. And that's where it really makes me happy, because I think a lot of people have that misconception of, like, what's really you behind the scenes, and it's not. But what I like about it is what you've developed into. And the hardest thing of this business, that I believe, is, number one, being able to run a show, and at that level, be able to, when you've got, how many guys did you have on the last show?
40, 45.
Yeah. So that's a huge locker room. There's promoters out there right now that are having a hard time, controlling 18 guys. And the reason for that is, and what I'm ultimately proud of you for, is the wrestlers have to respect you. And that they have that respect. They'll come to you and say, hey, what about this on my match? But, ultimately, this is your baby. This is, what Kyle is doing. This is, Pit Fight is Kyle Harper, and I could be prouder than that.
All right, everybody, that was QB Blitz for his interview. Thank you again for letting me do this.
Thanks for having me.